Hello athletes, this is Travis, back with another training talk. It's been a little bit of break, life has been busy, but I'm happy to kind of get back into some subjects that I think can help you, and this one in particular I think is going to be critical for any athlete out there, regardless of whether you're a rower or any other endurance sport, or honestly anything that's not even endurance sport, because we're going to be talking about kind of how we are kind of perceiving our progress on a day-to-day basis and how that's kind of affecting our motivation for training, and kind of trying to get out of this kind of place where we are dependent upon kind of a session or day-to-day improvement curve in order to kind of keep us motivated. All right, and the examples I'm going to be using are going to be very much for endurance athletes, and in the case of rowing, which is what this channel is kind of built on, is we're going to be talking about kind of a UT2 progression and standard, though that's just going to be the example. The ideas that I'm going to be talking about in terms of kind of following your UT2 progress from a week-to-week basis, month-to-month basis, and kind of your expectations on a day-to-day performance is going to be applicable to any kind of training in general. And the key thing here that kind of inspired this is that so often when I'm talking to my athletes, especially if I'm working with an athlete that has just kind of got away from kind of doing their own training without any kind of enemy guide of what to do on a day-to-day basis, of just kind of doing what other people suggest or what they think they should be doing or what they remember from their own training time when they were part of the team. Whenever those are kind of coming and kind of joining and doing one of the remote coaching sessions, or maybe even some of the consulting that I offer through GTS, then obviously those athletes are going to kind of start to see improvements fairly early, and generally they're going to have a fairly kind of consistent curve of decreasing steady state times or improving steady state times. And so when they're along that process, though, you're definitely still going to have days where you are kind of on and when you're not on. And what I taught to those athletes, and a lot of times I'll have an athlete that say they're pulling a 2-minute split for an average on their workouts, and then they have a day where they're like 202, and they come to me and they're like, well, I just didn't really have a good day, I was kind of struggling with this, I was at that 202. And my response is, that's not a bad day, that you're well within kind of the average of performances that you can expect. And I think the trap that athletes fall into, especially when I'm working with young athletes, is they're stuck on this idea that the only good days are the days where they are either as fast as they were before or slightly faster. And that's not the case at all. And that's where kind of having a training log and tracking your training, and then maybe even taking the data from that training and plugging it in something like an Excel spreadsheet, creating a graph of it, will help kind of keep you focused and motivated, because it's giving you a chance to kind of step back and look at the bigger picture, to get out of just the moment of being in that particular training session or at the end of that training session and seeing what your splits were for that training session and compare them to what you've been used to pulling. All right, and so I'm gonna let's pull up a little visual display kind of for this. All right, so let's say we're tracking our progress here. All right, and each of these blips here is going to be a workout that you're doing as the days go on, and up here this is going to be your speed. All right, and let's do kind of an inverse curve. All right, so a lower split is higher on the thing. All right, so you're getting faster. All right, so your improvement curve hopefully is going to be something where it's gradually moving up over the course of time. But on a session-to-session basis, all right, you're looking at, okay, well, this session is here, that next session may be above, the next session may be below, and such, that, your sessions are this kind of scatter plot around what your improvement curve is going to be, all right? And so what happens with these athletes, they could be going through a couple months of training, and they're getting this nice, steady, beautiful improvement curve with their aerobic times, all right? So heart rate is consistent, effort is consistent, duration is consistent, but they're getting faster, all right? So it's a clear improvement of what they're doing. What's gonna happen, what I see a lot, especially with kind of young or less experienced athletes, is that every session that is at this curve or above, they're gonna feel great after those sessions. They're gonna feel good, they feel like a good day, And then every session here under it, they're gonna come out of that session and be like, oh, that was kind of a crappy session. I wasn't really feeling it that day. I was kind of slower than I was before, which is truly unfortunate, because that's part of their curve. That's part of their improvement curve, all right? So the days that you're below average, all right, are just as normal and should be just as motivating as the days that are above your curve, all right? The things that you want to worry about is when you're way below the curve here, all right? Sure, then hopefully when you're getting into that session, you can kind of track and maybe there's other stuff going on. Maybe you didn't get very good sleep that night. Maybe you didn't eat before your session and you're just starving, you got no energy. Maybe you're getting sick, all right? You know, you're having a bad day, something is well below. Then hopefully you've kind of watched some of my other videos where I talk about kind of your 3-point check and when is a good time to know if you should stop a session. If you're having a really bad day like that, chances are something's going wrong and you should call a audible and adjust, all right? But for the most part, you know, all those days where you're slower than the curve, when you're slower than the average, that's part of the curve, all right? That's part of the standard distribution. And so I want you guys to be able to kind of listen to this and take this and say, it's all right for me to have those days where I've been averaging 2 minutes split on my steady state, but today I was just feeling a 202. You know, you finish it, that's fine. And there's another reason that reality, all right, that reality that you're gonna have some days that are slower than others is actually built into how I talk about how to structure a UT2 session, all right? And I had a video kind of talking about that in detail, where I actively talk about kind of letting yourself start a little bit slow and then finish faster, all right? And I had a great comment the other day asking about that. They were like, well, if I'm starting and if I'm getting faster every 5 or 10 minutes like you're saying, Travis, then I'm gonna end up finishing 12 seconds faster than I started. And I think for that athlete, I suspect that they were assuming that I was saying that every 5-10 minutes you should be 1 split faster. And it was definitely not that. So when I'm saying faster, I'm talking about a subtle increase in speed. So using myself as an example, if let's say if I was going to be doing a 2-minute split on a steady state, then that first 10 minutes I always advocate as a very patient, very gradual warm-up. So I might sit down, I might start pulling a 210, a 208. If I'm really feeling sluggish that day, I might start at a 215 split, pulling that for a couple minutes. You know, as each minute passes, you know, my body's getting looser, warmer, my split's starting to come down without me having to increase the effort or the stroke rate. And so maybe 5 minutes into that warm-up, I'm sitting around like a 204, 205 split. And then by the end of that warm-up, I'm settling out into around a 202, 203 split. And that's where I'm gonna reset my monitor, all right? Because I always want to eliminate my speed during the warm-up from what I'm recording for that session, because I don't want to be tempted to go fast on my warm-up to make my overall final split faster. So I'm going to reset the monitor, I'm going to restart into the core of the session. I still consider that 10 minutes part of the session. So if I'm doing a 60-minute steady state, then I'm going to reset the monitor after 10 minutes and I'm going to row another 50 minutes and that's going to be my 60, all right? Because I'm not stopping, I'm not walking around taking a break, I'm just resetting the monitor. So I start that next 50 minutes sitting around 202, 203. You know, maybe after another 10 minutes I've warmed up, I'm tapping along at a 201. By halfway through, I'm tapping around at maybe a 2-minute split. I'm feeling really good that day, and so maybe 45, 50 minutes in, I'm sitting around 159, I'm feeling good, maybe 158, you know, on some strokes, and then I finish out the piece in my average 2 minutes, 0.4, something like that, all right? By approaching that workout in that way, all right, I set myself up so that I can have good days and bad days, all right? So I can have a bad day. I'm not saying bad, I'm just saying maybe an off day or maybe a non-ideal day. I'm doing my warm-up, all right? I finished that warm-up, 202, 203. This time, you know, I'm 30 minutes in and I'm maybe pulling 201 just because I feel a little sluggish that day. So I'm not naturally getting a lot faster and I'm not really feeling particularly great at that 201, and so maybe, you know, after another 20 minutes, maybe I've still loosened up, so maybe I'm still pulling a 2-minute split, but I'm not feeling the 158s today, I'm not feeling the 159s, and so I finished that workout at a 2-minute instead of a 158. Well, my average for that day is probably going to be 201.5, something like that, because my ramp up was way longer and way slower, and I never got to the same speeds. And so by always starting patient and by allowing how I feel to dictate how much I ramp up over the course of that session, and by saying ramp up, I'm not saying deliberately going faster. I'm saying that when you're doing steady state, you're always kind of holding the reins a bit, all right? You should always be able to go faster when you're doing steady states if you needed to, all right? So I'm just saying that as you go farther and farther, if you're feeling good, you should have to hold that reins a lot more in order to kind of hold yourself back in that speed. And on the days where you're feeling good, you don't have to be as tight on those reins. You can kind of loosen them up, let yourself kind of feel good, have a good day, as long as you're not feeling like you're working harder, all right? And so your effort on steady state should be consistent from the early stages to the late stages, and if you're getting faster, it's just because your body's loose, your body's warm, you're having a good day. It's not because you're deliberately saying, I'm pulling a 202 for the first 10 minutes, and then a 201 for the next 10 minutes, and then a 2 minute for the next 10 minutes, and then 158, and then 157, whatever it may be. It's just a natural acceleration. And then the same thing on the days that you're feeling great, you finish that warm up, you're sitting around that 202, 203, and you are definitely holding the reins back on that warm up. You settle in and you're just immediately clicking off 2 minutes 201s within the first 10 minutes, and you're still holding those reins, and you let those reins go a little bit after 20 minutes, and you're tapping along at a 159 2-minute split, and you're still feeling good. You know, last 20 minutes, you let go of those reins a little bit more, and you're tapping off 158s like it's your job, and every once in a while you hit a 156, 157, but you're still like holding it back a little bit, so you're staying around that 158. Well, on that day, you're spending a lot more time at those lower splits, so your average is going to be low, all right? So on those days, your average is going to be above the curve, all right, on the faster side of the curve, all right? And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, set up your UT2 sessions in particular, and you can translate this idea to all your other sessions, all right? Always start with a little bit of patience and then ramp up depending on kind of how you're feeling, and hopefully experience will stop you from ramping up too fast, all right? Remember that you always want to feel, especially when you're doing aerobic work, or even when you're training an aerobic phase with anaerobic work, you always want to feel like you could go a little bit faster, all right? And that's it, all right? And so that is my talk today, is like, you have to be comfortable where the days where you're slower than average, and don't let those days affect your motivation. Don't consider them bad days, all right? They're just slower days, which is part of it, all right? That's how averages work, all right? But that's it, that's my video. Hopefully this helped you guys, especially kind of younger, inexperienced people. But yeah, comment down below if you have any kind of thoughts on this. Give this video a like if you helped. Share it with other people that you feel like kind of struggle with this idea of calling their slower days their bad days, all right? You know, it's not a bad day if you're within a couple seconds of your average split on your steady states, or even within a couple tenths of a second on your anaerobic days, or maybe even a second or so on your anaerobic days. As long as you're close to within your average, I think you'll be doing fine, all right? But that's it. This is Travis signing off. We'll catch you on the next video. Bye.